On January 18th, 2018, over 6 years ago, I made a video that lives in infamy in my mind. The title of this video was Psychologically Analyzing Maki Nishikino, and essentially the entire video was me using little details to say that Maki had Asperger's. As if the terribly crunchy audio wasn't bad enough, I made the brilliant decision to share it in front of my entire psychology class. Not a single person said a word to me about it afterward, and it's the single most embarrassing thing I've ever done. Since it was on my old channel, the video is now thankfully lost to time, banished only to the back of my thoughts to torment me at inopportune moments. Today, as a courtesy to myself, I'm going to talk about autism in a far more productive manner, and not about Maki Nishikino, but Rina Tennoji. Before we get into that discussion, however, there's some framing I gotta set first. One of the most important steps towards possessing good media literacy is unlearning the notion of the correct interpretation. If comprehending media well and knowing author intent was as simple as agreeing with a short, simple quip, people wouldn't dedicate their entire careers to analyzing J.R.R. Tolkien, which they do, to be clear. There are many ways to analyze a piece of media, and multiple interpretations of a work can, and frankly should, coexist. Good media literacy is not finding what you believe to be the most rational take and dying on that hill. It comes from your ability to make a good interpretation, and be able to rationally back it up. It's a bit daunting a task, but hey, we all start somewhere. I'm no exception. I made this mistake back in the day and fell into two big pitfalls: summary as analysis, and look at how dark it is, without offering anything further. To quote one Jacob Geller, darkness is not a theme. Secondly, I know this sounds obvious, but you have to remember, these are fictional characters. Now, some of us in this community got a little bit of delulu, but from time to time, I'll see people treat criticism of a character within a narrative as some sort of attack against an actual person. Anecdotally, in an inverse way, some fans actually sent threats to the VA for Lonju for what the character did in the story of Cephas, as if that was the Seiyu's own actions and beliefs on display. Guys, they are fictional characters operating within a narrative. Please tone the delusion down a notch and do not harass voice actors. Crazy idea, I know. With that out of the way, back to Rina. When I see videos say like, is this character X thing? You're almost always gonna find some idiot in the comments saying, they aren't, next question. In fact, if you see someone say that in the comments here, timestamp them to this time on screen. Because for those people, you are an idiot! You didn't watch the video! You judged the video by its title, you utter buffoon! Suck my dick! When I ask if Rina makes for good autistic representation, I'm not looking to misconstrue details and say that objectively, Rina is autistic, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong. I made a note of Rina being a character within a narrative because I want you to understand the trope Rina fits into, and how her portrayal gave me reason to make a video like this. Rina fits into the trope of the shy, socially awkward character, someone who has trouble expressing themselves openly. The way Rina is written within this trope, however, is in a way I found many autistic people empathize with and relate to. Now, autism is a spectrum, and I personally am high-functioning, although I was diagnosed as having Asperger's when I was little. Of course, the term Asperger's has fallen out of fashion, given it was named after a guy named Hans Asperger. He did some things. For people on the spectrum, what features we exhibit may vary from person to person, but there are some commonalities that I've heard autistic people relate to in Rina. One of the most important of these has to be facial muteness. I personally really relate to this one, as my expressions tend to be very blank or consist of a simple smile most of the time. What I adore about Rina is how she reacts to the world around her. She feels scared of the people around her misunderstanding her or being unable to connect with her. Growing up, I also felt misunderstood and unable to understand my peers well. I used to see being on the spectrum as a net negative, that I would have to work hard to meet the standards of quote-unquote normal people and overcome quote-unquote having Asperger's. Of course, autism is a neurological formation of the brain, so you can't overcome it or cure it. Tragically, I even used to look down on others on the spectrum because I thought Asperger's was a less worse version of autism. I thought this way as an unforeseen consequence of counselors trying to mold me into an acceptable student, rather than help me find my own ways of approaching the world. I had to figure that shit out myself, and I take a bitter pride in that. If you tell a kid there's an inherent issue with them, and they need help to fit in, they're going to internalize that supposed issue as a bad thing, like I had in the past. In Rina's case, there's an internalized sense of, I need to overcome this fault, or I will never be able to connect with people. What ultimately solves this dilemma isn't Rina overcoming her facial muteness, it's her willingness to embrace it, and work alongside it to allow her to more comfortably deal with the world. The Rina-chan board is not only distinctly Rina, it presents itself in a way that says, embracing who you are and finding your own way in the world is nothing to be embarrassed about. There will be people who accept you for who you are, and won't treat you as a lesser for it. That message hits extremely close to home for me. When I ask, is Rina Tennoji good autistic representation, I do not mean Rina literally says she is autistic and objectively must be. What I mean is simply, as an autistic person, I relate to the struggles of this character and feel myself represented in their struggles. Rina fits into a trope that doesn't outright state her to be autistic, but can represent the struggles neurodivergence or really anyone with similar stories can relate to. For that reason, I think Rina is not only a good, but a great representation of neurodivergence. If you've ever heard someone call a character autistic coded, they are saying that as a person of that group, they relate and feel represented by that character. Similarly, many people see Rin as trans representation because of her story in Muse. Many trans folk, including friends of mine, relate to her struggles with expression quite strongly. Representation is a weird concept. When people think of representation, they may usually think of it in a traditional sense, where diversity only comes from having people of certain groups present on the big screen. Sometimes, though, characters can be made to represent groups or even ideas personified. The limits to what you can depict in fiction are essentially boundless, so long as you're being respectful about it. Even if Rina isn't technically autistic, she can represent autistic people because of the tropes she inhabits, and the struggles she faces lining up with autistic experiences. In summary, be yourself, because you're the only person in the world who gets to be you.